Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Magnato, and I'd like to welcome you to my session on distance learning and virtual classrooms. So with this past spring being as unpredictable as it was, a lot of us are looking to the fall and trying to figure out what our classroom is going to look like and how we're going to approach teaching and instructing our students this upcoming school year. So our session today is going to focus a lot on that and the resources and tools that you can use to make this experience a little bit better for not only your students, but also for you and your stress levels. Before I jump into my presentation, I did want to just kind of go over a couple of things with you. I come from a teaching family. My husband teaches in my district as well as my mom and my sister. So we were sort of all in this together, which made it nice. Um, we also, if you notice behind me, we invested in a whiteboard. If you're going to make any like singular investment for distance learning or for your virtual classroom, I would strongly recommend something similar to this. I teach math, so I needed to have a way that I could show my kids examples and do work with them. There were a lot of afternoons where I would jump on and meet with just one or two kiddos, and we would go over some of the content that they were learning while they were at home. It just made it a lot easier because it was something that I had in my classroom, and I was able to bring that here. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is I got it on Amazon. It wasn't that expensive, but it was the one thing that like I felt that I needed to have control. So I would recommend um, thinking about that one thing that's in your classroom that you need to feel that you need to have with you at home to feel like you have control or to feel like you can do your absolute best. For me, it was a silly whiteboard. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything expensive or elaborate. But it just made me feel like maybe I can do this. So think about that throughout this presentation. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please go ahead and email me, and I'd be more than happy to address those as I can. Just one more thing before we go, and that is that no matter where you are in this digital learning, distance education, virtual classroom scenario, that it's okay, that you are right where you need to be and you will be perfectly fine. If you are tech savvy, I am not 100% tech savvy. I do not have Chromebooks in my classroom. I did not have a Google Classroom set up before we went into quarantine. I did not use technology with my students every single day. Again, I needed a whiteboard to make myself feel comfortable, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. I do have a smartboard in my classroom, which has enabled me to do a lot of things from home with a little bit more ease. But as far as being an expert, I am certainly not. So please do not take everything that I am saying and commit it to stone. I'm also not, I know some of you this might be brand new for you, and this might be very uncomfortable territory. My advice to you is ask your kids for help. Even the kindergartners, they can help you digitally with technology. They are excellent at it. So ask them for help. It was one of the things that I did when we first started our distance learning, and I kind of gave my kids the reins on what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what do you think we should do, and they came up with some great ideas. So ask them for help, have them show you things. I'll show you in a little bit how to share screen so that your kids can show you stuff as well. So ask for help, ask your team, ask every question you could possibly think of, and just know that all you have to do is start, practice, and this will become very easy for you, I promise. So please don't feel overwhelmed by everything I'm going to show you. I have some tips and tricks for you that hopefully will help. But like I said, if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you a presentation. If you would like a copy of this presentation, you can take notes. I'm sure you're capable of that. But if you would like a copy of this, I can get that for you. Just send me an email and I will take care of it. I'll send it out to you. So again, this is distance learning, and we are going to go over some tips to create a virtual classroom community. Classroom community is one of my go-tos. I mean, the world can be falling apart, things could be set on fire, and as long as I have a classroom community with my students, I feel like I can get through anything with them. So I'm going to focus more on that and how to sort of engage and motivate and get kids to come to your virtual lessons, as opposed to exactly like which tools you should be using and how to use them. I will say that two of our other presenters, Doug Popovic and Rebecca Crawford, they are both doing sessions on, one is on Screencastify and the other is on the Google Suite. If you have the opportunity to check those out, I would highly recommend that. They are both excellent places for resources, or excellent knowledge bases on that, and they will be able to answer all of your questions. I am simply going to sort of talk to you about like what could you use, not necessarily how to use it. So a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Stephanie Magnato. I graduated from SRU in 2011 with my undergrad, and then again in 2014 with my master's. I am certified kindergarten the whole way through 12th grade, with my focus at the secondary level in history and social studies, and then I have math and ELA through 9th grade. I have taught everything. For the past 7 years, though, I have been mainly math. Um, and for the past 3 years, I've been only math. So a lot of my virtual classroom experience is coming from trying to get kids to like and enjoy and feel like they can do math without actually being present with them. Our goals for our session today, the first one, I wanted you to feel like you can change your physical classroom into a virtual one. I want it to be a seamless transition because I know, like a lot of you, our falls are up in the air right now. Some of us are going to be in the classroom, some of us are going to be virtual, some of us are going to be doing both. So I want to make sure that what we create today, or what I share with you today, is something that you can transfer back and forth as seamlessly as possible, so it's not a huge stressor on you, and it's also not something that's going to catch your students off guard. I would like for you to find a way to make this distance learning work for you and for your students with as little stress as possible. The one thing that I had to keep telling myself all spring long was, this is the best that I can do right now for them. It may not be perfect, it might not be the most effective thing that I could do, but right now, what I'm capable of doing, this is the best that I can offer them, and that's good enough for now. So obviously this summer I am looking at different things I could do to make it better, but I just want you to find something, even if it's just one little thing that works for you, that makes your day less stressful, then I will feel successful. And then the last thing, which kind of goes with that, is just to find something you can use in your classroom that you can start using today even, or tomorrow, whenever you start to plan for the fall. And then I always include in all of my presentations my student goals. I just think it's helpful to know sort of what kind of classroom I have. And if that is the same as yours, then fantastic. And if it's not, then at least be aware this is where I'm coming from with my students. I expect all of my students to be a team player at all times. I actually have them broken up into teams, and we stick with those teams all school year long. And they compete against each other and they help each other out. So being a team player is huge, which is one of the things that I think helped us out so much with distance learning. Was they kind of knew that we were all there together and we were all there to help each other out. So that was beneficial. This goal at least was beneficial for that. The next thing is having a positive self-esteem and a sense of empathy, advocating for yourself, demonstrating that can-do attitude, that this is not impossible, I can do this. And lastly, I want them to enjoy learning. So obviously when the school shut down back in March and we went to a digital classroom, my biggest concern was they're not going to love learning anymore. It'll be different, it'll be nice, but then when we were going to find out we were doing it for the rest of the year, I was really concerned about goal number 5. It's just that, will they still enjoy what we're doing, or will they absolutely hate it? So that was one of my main focuses in the spring, and it will continue to be one of my main focuses when we start up in the fall. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is how to create a virtual classroom, ways in which you can do that. So these are sort of how the getting started. If you already have something that's set up that works for you, great, use it. But if you are sort of in the boat where like you did something in the spring and it was merely like a life jacket and you were just using it to get by, then this would be a good way to sort of start thinking about how you can adjust and how you can create a better classroom for your students this upcoming school year. So I always start with 4 or 5 like starter questions. And the ones that I used this spring were, what resources do I have available to me? What can I do? What do I have access to that I can give these kids? The next one was, what resources do my students have available at home? And that was probably the trickier one, just because a lot of my students did not have access to a computer or internet at home. So we had to wait for our school to set them up with something. And with those students, it was sort of a lot of phone calls were made, me calling them, just checking in, just to sort of try to keep the communication going. So I didn't want them to feel like they were being left out or lost. So definitely think about what they have access to and sort of plan your, I guess, execution from there, how you're going to execute your classroom, plan it off of what they have available to them. Um, the third one is, what do you need and what do you need your classroom to look like in order to feel like you're being prepared? Again, mine was as simple as a whiteboard. I just needed it. I didn't use it every single day, but the fact that I had it and I knew that I could use it made me feel like this is more like my classroom instead of my home, which is what I needed it to be for about 3 months. Um, Also, my room is very elementary based. I'm very elementary based. I'm not a secondary based. So my classroom has a lot of posters, has a lot of color, it has a lot of student work, it has a lot of student showcasing. Um, there's a lot going on. So I felt like when I saw my students, I wanted them to see that that hasn't changed. So I needed to do something like to kind of keep their attention on that. And then lastly, and probably my most important question, how can I keep my students fully engaged without physically being with them in the classroom? And this is what we're going to focus on a lot today, is how can we keep them engaged? How can we make it so when it's a beautiful day outside and they have to log on to come to a meeting, they're not dreading it. It's not what they actually enjoy coming. Maybe they didn't show up early. How can we get kids to do that? My little tip for you on this one is limit yourself to 4 questions. Maybe they're my 4, maybe you come up with your own 4. These questions will waterfall. Like it'll be if you give a mouse a cookie situation. They're going to create more questions you're going to have to answer. So if you create 10 questions, you're going to end up having 100 questions to have to kind of sift through. Whereas if you start with 4 or 5, then maybe you only end up with 30 questions. If you start with just 1 question, maybe you only end up with 5. And I would not attack all of these at one time. I would certainly start small and go from there. While we're here, before I transition to the next slide, I do want you to notice up here in the top right-hand corner, I do have an emoji. I will talk about that in a couple of minutes. I just want you to know that they're there for a reason. So there's going to be one on every slide. They have a purpose. Okay, the next thing is the distance learning resources. There are so many things, people, that you have access to or that you could have access to. And I am telling you, you just want one of them. And if you go to look for just one, you're going to come up with 15. And then you no longer know which one you wanted. So I have thrown out just a few here. This is not an exhaustive list. This is certainly not like the best one's going to work for everybody, but it's a list. So for a classroom simulation, to kind of make your kids feel like they are in a classroom of some sort where you can assign things, assess things, Google Classroom and Meets are my go-to. Now, again, I teach at Slippery Rock, so I am a very Google-driven school. We do a lot with Google. All of our kids have Google accounts. All of our teachers have Google accounts. Most of us have Google Classrooms at this point, because if you didn't in the last fall, you will this fall. So I prefer Google Classroom. I know other schools, you may not have Google, the Google Suite. So if that's the case, you might be looking at something like Schoology, Blackboard, or if you don't have access to any of that. Again, a lot of this is district provided. So our district provides us with the Google Suite, so we have access to Google Classroom. If your district does not, they might provide something similar or something else. It might be a Microsoft Teams situation. If that's still like, you're like, no, our district doesn't do any of that, you can always create a simple website. Like you can go to Google, create a website. Some of them are free, some of them will charge you a yearly fee. But if you create that website, that could then be a, hey kids, go to this website, and then from there they can click on a whole bunch of things. And I'm going to sort of show you what that might look like in a future slide. But just know that if you feel like your district's not offering you anything yet, my guess is they probably will in the fall. But if they don't, you can always have a website and ask if you can link it up to the district site. So whenever they go to the district website and click on your name, it could take them to this website. Just a thought. The other thing that you absolutely need for distance learning is a communication tool. Communication is huge for me in any situation, but especially during this past spring, I relied on it heavily. I personally, again, I'm more elementary focused. I use Class Dojo. However, I do use GroupMe and Remind for my athletic teams. So I know people who use Remind for their classrooms as well, and they seem to really enjoy it. Again, it's really up to you and I would definitely do your research and figure out what works best for you. I prefer Class Dojo just because it's very simple, it's very basic. Again, I said I have my kids on teams. I can put their little team icon beside all of their names, so when they walk in, they can see themselves separated in their teams. It's just my preference. I enjoy being able to message parents back and forth. I enjoy being able to kind of have a class story where I can post things. You might not want that. You might just want a simple direct communication. That's perfectly fine. So you might want to look into Remind or GroupMe for something along those lines. Extensions. So if you look at the top of my screen, and I only have 2 showing right now because I didn't want it to be like a whole list of them. But if you look up here at the top of my screen, you will see 2 extensions. Currently, I have Bitmoji extension and I have the Screencastify extension. The Bitmoji extension gives me these pictures. If you can kind of see here, let me see if I can pull up my pen, which I thought that I had it here. Oh, my pointer. So this right here is a Bitmoji for those of you who don't know. It's designed to look similar to you. You create it yourself, and then you can insert it into your email, slides, docs, pretty much anywhere. You can copy and paste them. You can have, most of you probably have them on your phone for messaging. But these are my extensions that I use. Again, like I said, I have other ones, but those are just the ones that I have showing right now. So extensions that might be beneficial to you. One of them, if you are a Google user, Jamboard is a really great alternative to having a whiteboard. So one of the biggest issues is you are doing all of this work, and especially if you're like me and you teach math, you want the kids to show their work back. Now, the way that I got around this in the spring was very like emergency situation. I need something. I had the kids show their work, take a picture, and send it to me. They just put it on Class Dojo for me, and I was able to look at it and kind of help them from there. They also could post it on Classroom, and I could look at it there. That's nice. However, again, I have 125 students, so if they're all sending me their work, that could very quickly bog down, and I had to sort through all of that stuff. So that could get a little bit expensive. Jamboard and Kami both are situations where the students can edit. Kami is a PDF. They can edit the PDF. They can write over it and send it back to you. Jamboard is, I would share a whiteboard similar to this one, a digital whiteboard with them, and then they can all edit. And if I share the same board to all of the kids and they make an annotation, then another kid makes an annotation, they'll be able to see that. So it's sort of like us all being at the chalkboard together. Extremely beneficial, very helpful, especially if you're doing a lesson and you need kids to come to the board. All of that is great. Pear Deck and Screencastify, as well as Flipgrid, those are other extensions you can get for either recording devices, assessment tools. I think Pear Deck has some assessments on there. Or if you need to share information with kids and have them share it back, those are other things that people have really seemed to enjoy. Again, I don't use Pear Deck or Flipgrid or Cami. I just know they have a lot of great reviews. A lot of this is going to come down to what you feel comfortable with and what you enjoy. And then lastly, the other here, any other classroom resource that you can transition with. If you do something in your room every single day and you would like to be able to do that virtually, just look it up. I pull sticks to call on kids' names. I've done it for 8 years. Virtually, that becomes a little tricky because I didn't have all of my jars with my sticks at home with me. I used Class Dojo. I did a random student selector, and it picked a kid's name for me. So if you have something that you love that you want to continue using, just think about what it would be called or how you would transition that into a question and look it up. They probably have an extension for that. Also, and this sort of the tip here on this one, this can get overwhelming, like I said, very, very quickly. So my recommendation is to pick 1 or 2 things that you feel like that might work for me. Start now and think about how you would like to use it. That way, by August, like, I didn't like that. Or you'll run into a situation in August, be like, I remember over summer I did something similar to this. Let me try this instead. It becomes a lot less overwhelming if you kind of already have a plan in your head as to what resources you want to use that you are able to integrate into your classroom. Another recommendation I could make would be to definitely talk to your technology expert in your building. I bother mine on a weekly basis, probably a daily basis, about needing help with something or like, hey, is there something I can use for this instead? And he will go and do the research for me and come back and be like, you should use this. So I would definitely take advantage of the individuals in your building who are able to help. My last sort of recommendation, and it goes along the lines of like pick early and practice. I would really recommend discussing this all with your team. My team and I, we had department meetings all throughout the spring, and a lot of us talked about like, what are we doing? What are we using? Just because if Johnny is being told to use Meet and Sally is being told to use Zoom, for parents who are trying to work together, that can become really confusing. So I would recommend if your district does not say we are all using this, you have to do this, and you have to use this kind of communication app, or you have to use Google Meets, or you're not allowed to use Zoom, whatever they tell you. If they don't come out with the flat out plan saying we want you to use these basic tools or these basic resources, I would strongly encourage sitting down with either your grade level team or your department and just really trying to narrow down what you would all like to use so that way it's seamless and it's across the board. It's just my thoughts on that. Again, if you don't have to, then you don't have to, but I think it would be beneficial for not only the students, but also the parents, and I think for the teachers as a whole, if everyone was doing the same thing. With that being said, practice. Hold a meet with just you and your team. When we started this back in the spring, I had never done a meet before through Google. So I invited my sister, I invited my mom, I invited my husband, and we were all like in different houses, but we all sat down and did like a meet, and we all clicked on things and tried to figure out what we were doing. You're not going to break this stuff, so click away. Try your best to sort of figure out how to use it and what works best for you. So that way when you have kids involved, you at least have some sort of experience with it. Okay, sorry, we'll rant over. Next slide. Maybe here. Okay, so one of the big things for me was having a virtual classroom environment. Like I said, my classroom is we we got a lot going on. We have kids on teams, we have kids doing grouping. I differentiate a lot. So I needed to make sure that my environments carried through from my classroom to my virtual classroom. The first thing was communication. I got a Google Classroom set up immediately. I made sure all of my parents who were on Class Dojo got on Class Dojo so I could message them directly if I ever needed anything. And I did a lot of emailing and a lot of phone calling. So make sure you have all of their emails and their phone numbers. It could be as simple as creating a Google form. And again, I can show you how to do that. But it could be as simple as creating a Google form and having the parents provide you with their email address and sending this out. If you don't have their email address, then it could be something as quickly, maybe here. It could be something as simple as just having them fill out a form and then you have to input it all. But I think that it would definitely be beneficial to have. So let me sort of show you what these forms look like. Now, again, you could do this for a lot of things. And again, I am a Google Suite user. So if you notice up here, I have all of my Google apps that I have access to kind of make this a little bit easier on myself. But if you would like, you can always create a form. And I would just show you, this is the one I created at the end of this last school year. I sent out to all of my students. But they can kind of click through. This is for their team, sorry. But they can click through and they can submit the form digitally. And then you can tally up all of their responses. So you can tally up all of their responses and you can put them all into a spreadsheet. So right here it says view responses in a sheet. If you do that, then you would have each kid, you could have their contact information, their email, their phone number. You could do all of that. Again, if you are interested in Google Forms, or if you are interested in docs, slides, any of those things, I would recommend reaching out to Rebecca Crawford, or you can always email me, and that's a whole other session. It would take a little bit of time, and this is not why we're here. I'm just showing you that you do have that option for obtaining parent information. Okay, the next thing, Google Classroom, is what I chose to use. If you have it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. You do have other options. Like I said, you could even do a website. One of the things that I decided to do with my Google Classroom was I wanted to make sure I could create something, assign something, and assess something. So I will give you a glimpse into my Google Classroom that I had from the spring. I'll give you a little glimpse of that here in a minute, but that is something that I relied heavily on. Also, for my classroom environment, I did want to create this banner. Now, this is something that you most certainly do not need. Google Classroom is set default with a banner. I felt the need to create one. It was one of those days where I was pretty sure that like none of my kids were learning, and where I felt like none of them were logging in, and I felt like every parent was upset with me. And I just need something to distract myself, but I didn't want to quit working. So I sat down and I created a banner for each of my classes. And this is my 6th grade math banner right here. And that is the very first thing my kids see when they log into Google Classroom. I probably did it at the beginning of April, middle of April. So my students have been in my Google Classroom, and they were there when I didn't have a banner, and they were there when I did have a banner. And for the first 10 or 15 minutes of our meeting after I had put this up, that's all we talked about was the banner and how nice it is and how it kind of matches our classroom, how it's colorful, how those posters are nice, how'd you get your school picture on there, you have the school emblem on the wall. Like all of the questions, they were super into it, they loved it, and it made me sort of feel like, all right, the whole world's not falling apart. They're still here. They're still engaged. You had a day where it felt like maybe they weren't. Again, you don't need this. It's just something extra. So whenever your kids log in, they feel like, hey, my teacher put time into this, or this is like me what their classroom would be like, especially if we start in the fall digitally. I feel like if I'm going to be starting remote learning in the fall with a brand new group of kids who have never met me before, I want to make sure that they know that like I care about this kind of stuff. And if they were to walk into my classroom, this is what they would see as well. I want them to make them feel like they're at home, like they have a place there, like they belong. And I want them to be genuinely excited about coming to class. So for me, it was something as simple as this. It took a little bit of time. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a little time intensive, but a lot of it was just me messing around and playing with different things to put in. And I will show you how to do that here in just a second. Another thing that helped my classroom environment was virtual meetings. Again, I use Google Meets. You could use Zoom if you're permitted. The biggest thing here is make sure these meetings have plans. Make sure you think them through. The first one I held was probably 3 weeks after we had shut down from school. We took shut down school. We were closed for 2 weeks. And then we started after the 2 weeks. We started with our distance learning plan. And it was during that time that I was like, I just need to see my kids. Like, I just need to see them, and I need to explain to them what we're doing because I felt like it was a little bit confusing from a student perspective. So I wanted to make sure that they had it kind of explained, and I wanted them to feel like they had a place where they could ask questions and get answers. So I held a meet. It was not planned out at all. None of us had any idea what we were doing, but we figured it out. They asked a bunch of questions, and then for a good 30 seconds, they kind of just sat there and stared at each other because they really didn't know what to do, and they're not comfortable on a camera where they can see themselves and their friends, and they weren't comfortable yet. So from that point on, I knew if I'm having a meeting, I need to have a plan for the meeting. So make sure you have a plan. And once you have those 3 things kind of nailed down, once you have your communication plan set, once you have what your classroom is going to look like, if you're not using Google Classroom, maybe you have your website created, as long as you have somewhere for them to go or a hub. And then once you have a way to meet and interact with your students kind of figured out, the rest sort of just kind of all gets put together. I will say this is time consuming, so start early. Try, even if it's just thinking about it, start thinking about it now. I personally feel like whatever happens in the fall, this will be beneficial. Having this thought process in our head or thinking about how would I do it if we did have to lock down the schools again, what will it look like, immensely beneficial. So just start thinking about it. And if you want to go and create your banner because it's fun, then go create your banner. But certainly something just to kind of keep in the back of your mind as to, okay, what could I do to create that classroom environment where the students not only feel welcomed, but they want to come. Okay, next up is this classroom Bitmoji banner and Google Classroom just in general. So again, like I said, I use Google Classroom. I use Meet. And then I also use this Bitmoji banner for my classroom. So let me show you what my classroom looks like. And I'm actually going to share you this tab. So this is my 3rd period class from last fall, last school year. And this is where my banner goes. So whenever you log into the classroom, the first thing they see, they have their stream here. They have their classwork tab, people tab, grade tab, all at the top. Any upcoming work that they have assigned to them will go on the left-hand side whenever it's there. For them to join, there's a class code for them to join. You can display the said class code so they can see it if you happen to be lucky enough to see them when you create your Google Classroom. Most of us usually are. Like I said, I created my Google Classroom the day that we left school while we were in school, and they sort of added themselves to my classes throughout the day. So I had most of my students who already joined the classroom prior to leaving. I did have a handful of students who did not join until after we were out of school, so a lot of them had to come on and accept my invitation to them. And then you can also generate a Meet link here. So if you would like them to have a virtual meeting, then you can create the link there and you can have it displayed there for them to see. So this lovely banner is what I'm going to talk to you about right now. I think it's a huge game changer for the classroom. So what you would need to do is you're going to have to create a slides, like a Google Slides presentation. I'm sure you could probably use something else. I just found slides to be the easiest one for me to do. So again, really quickly here, I'll just take you to my slides. And I created two because, again, I have two classes. I have 6th and 7th grade. So I created one for 6th grade and I created one for 7th grade. When you get into slides, you're going to create a new slideshow, a slides presentation. You will have to, if you notice mine, if you log in, the screen's going to be a little bit bigger. If you notice mine is like rectangular shape, it's the shape of that banner. You will have to go to File, and then scroll down to Page Setup. Once you get the page set up, you're going to click on Custom. And then from custom, you're going to enter in these dimensions. It's 16 and 67 hundredths by 4 and 17 hundredths. And I have mine in inches because it's what I know. Once you do that, you'll go ahead and click apply, and then it will create this long rectangular box. From here, you just got to decorate. So you're going to go to insert, you're going to go to images, you're going to search the web. They will pull up a Google box for you. Maybe I want a blank wall template. And then they have all of these blank walls. Maybe I like this one. I'm going to drag. I'm going to place. And then I can kind of create it. It's not going to really fit, so maybe I don't do that one. And again, you can kind of make them fit however you need them to. Maybe I want this one. It's nice and springy and floral. You should be able to set it as the background. Choose an image. And then from here, you could always drag the file. If you have it saved, you can do your Google image search here, blank wall template. What are the odds I can find that same one? There it is. And that will then sort of create, maybe you don't like the flowers, you can always pick a different one, but that will create your classroom wall. From there, you just got to find things to add in. Maybe you need a chalkboard. So here's a chalkboard. This one in. And then a lot of this is just perception. So just make it look reasonable size-wise. And then from there, you could add in a couch. I'll just copy this one since I'm here. You have a couch in here. Maybe you want a bookshelf or a plant. So you can kind of create all of that. When you're done, you will save your slide as an image. And then when you finish that, you will go into your classroom. You will change your theme. Let me get back to my classroom so you can see. So you will come back here, you will upload a photo. Instead of such a theme, just upload a photo and it will be there for you to apply. Again, that is something that I found to be extremely beneficial. It just sort of made my virtual classroom feel a little bit more like a classroom. again, you can do that same exact thing that I just did. You can create a slide of normal dimensions. And then each picture that you implement, maybe you put in your Bitmoji. And again, this Bitmoji is right here. So I would click on it. If you can see that, I'm not sure if it's in this thread or not. Find a school appropriate one. You can put that into your slide, and then you can create a link to that. So when the kids open up the slides presentation, they can click on you, and you will take them to maybe an assignment, or you will take them maybe to a website or a game. So you really do have lots of opportunities for individualism and creativity there. Okay, so this is probably the big slide. This is probably what most of you are here for. And this is the engagement aspect. How can I get my kids engaged? How can I keep them engaged? And how can I keep them coming back to my classroom after, like, day after day, week after week, month after month, until the end of the school year? How can I do that? Couple of things I would recommend. Number one, hold class meetings. So at our district, for my students, we took a different route. I know a lot of districts did teacher created materials this past spring. We did not. We went with a service, and the kids logged in and completed the assignments they had to complete. They watched videos of, other individuals teaching them stuff. So really all I was expected to do is to touch base with my kids, make sure they didn't need any help, or if they needed help, help them. And then to make sure they were keeping up with their workload and their course load work. Those are really my expectations. However, I realized pretty quickly that that wasn't going to work for me. So I decided to have class meetings. I wanted to do like one a week. I ended up doing about 2 or 3 a week because the kids kept asking for them. So hold class meetings. They will enjoy them, even if it's just a fun one. Maybe you hold a class meeting on Monday and Wednesday, and then on Friday you have a fun class meeting. And you can always make stipulations on it. Like, you have to be at Mondays and you have to be at Wednesdays in order to be permitted to come to Fridays. And something. With younger kids, this is a little bit difficult just because you have to work more closely with the parents. I was fortunate enough that I had middle schoolers who most of them had their own device. I mean, I was in the back of people's cars with them, driving on the road. They were showing me like where they were going from their phone. So they had their own device, or they knew how to access and get on our Meet with a device at their house. With younger kiddos, that might not be an option. You might need the parents' involvement on that. So I would definitely recommend getting parents involved early. Like I said, my first meeting that I had with my kids was a parent meeting. I didn't meet with the kids as much as I met the parents. I told the kids I would love to see them and I wanted them to come, but I really wanted to see their parents. So I had their parents come on. Now remember, I did not have to do any of this. So my students coming to these meetings was not mandatory. They did not have to come. It did not affect their grade or their attendance. So out of my 80 sixth graders, I probably saw around 50 of them regularly. Whether it was maybe they jumped in at 1 or 2 meetings, maybe they just came to their personal meeting, maybe I spoke with them on the phone, but I was in contact regularly with 50 of them. The other 30, I'd probably say 20 of those 30 we would just kind of email, and it would kind of be done, or they'd leave me a message, or they would sort of just do their work and mind their business. And I would call every once in a while and check in. But they didn't really need anything. They were fine. And then I had about 10 between 6th and 7th grade that I really just couldn't get in touch with. Like, they sort of just fell off the face of the earth. And I knew they were okay because they were getting their work done, but I couldn't get them on the phone. I couldn't get them via email. I couldn't get them on meetings. And that's sort of something that you're going to have to come to peace with, especially in a situation where they're not required to come to any of your stuff. You're going to have to come to peace with the fact that, like, some kids just won't. I would say that the regular class meetings helps. They helped create a sense of normalcy. They helped the kids who are sort of just, they wanted to say hi to their friends. They gave them opportunities to do that. They were beneficial. So I would definitely recommend holding class meetings. I would also recommend private office hours with students on a weekly or a biweekly basis. I did mine biweekly because I have 125 students, so I really needed to kind of space them out a bit. But these would be ones where I would just meet with 4 or 5 students, or I would maybe only meet with one kiddo. I had one girl who she was struggling with the understanding of the online videos. So she would watch the video, she would do like her sample assignment or her, I guess, review assignment from watching the video, and then she would go to do her actual assignment and she would not do well. So we kind of got to an agreement of, okay, you watch the videos, you do your review assignments, and then when the actual assignment comes up, you let me know. And we got on a Meets. I used the whiteboard. I shared my board with her, and we sort of went through the assignment together. So that way I was able to communicate with her, I was able to help her, and then when it came time for her quiz, she was able to then go do that on her own and do it successfully. So the private office hours, especially for kids who struggle but work really, really hard, those I felt like were a huge benefit to them and to me. I didn't feel like I was wasting my time with that. I thought that was something that like some kids just need, and you'll be able to tell which kids need it. So I would definitely recommend those regular class meetings, private office hours with students if they need it. Again, those are virtual meetings as well on Meet. Having a plan. So I'm going to show you here kind of what one of my plans would look like. Again, I didn't have a lesson to teach, so a lot of mine were just jumping on and checking in. If I had a lesson to teach, this is the breakdown that I would use with them. I would do an icebreaker, have a lesson, do a question or a theme discussion that's not related to the lesson at all, finish your lesson or do practice with the lesson, and then close out with a challenge. So let me kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about here for the icebreaker. If I were you, I would come to this meeting early. I told my kids that I would provide them with a link. Either you can do that through like their calendar or you can just send it to them. And I will show you, I'll try to show you kind of what the Meet stuff looks like before I end up here. But I would come early and I would turn off my camera and I would share either a screen with them, which would have like their team points on it, or I would just kind of let them sort of trickle in at their own leisure. That I would give them about 15 minutes prior to our meeting time to do that. A lot of my kids who came to my meetings ended up coming either 10 minutes early or 5 minutes late. So you want to make sure that you give them time, especially if they're having technology issues or maybe their mom's not home from work yet, so they can't get on. You want to give them time to do that. Now, again, if you have kindergarten or like a primary grade, you might want to limit your class meetings to once or twice a week. Just so, I mean, if you're obviously instructing, you would want to do it every single day. My husband teaches 4th grade. He had a meet every single day for an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon with a different group of kids. And he actually provided instruction to them in that time. So I would recommend if you are going to be providing instruction solely through a digital means, probably have a set time every single day to meet, and then come early to that meeting. If you're in a situation where you have Google Classroom, you can kind of give them assignments, then maybe you go 3 times a week. You do a lesson day, and then the next day they do an assignment, and then they do a lesson, and they do an assignment, and then Friday can be a review day or something. Really, it's whatever works for you. But when you come early, have a plan set. So I came in early, I turned my camera off. I kind of watched all of my kids come in. They knew, and I told them it's just like as soon as they log in, it's like walking through the door of my classroom. So they sort of knew that I was there and I could see them. We went over what to expect on a virtual meeting, how to behave in a virtual meeting, how to create an environment that is conducive to a virtual meeting. So I told them, like, when you're in class, I don't want people walking around your desk. I want you focused, completing an assignment or paying attention. So when you're at home and we're doing class, I want to look just like classroom. So I want you at your table. I want you at your desk. I do not want you on your floor. I don't want you in your bed. Like, I want you dressed. Stress that one. You don't want to see anyone's PJs. So a lot of things that they knew we kind of went over. My 6th and 7th graders decided on their own that when they come in, they should probably mute because it's respectful to be quiet whenever you enter in a classroom. So the very first meeting we had their parents with them, and there's a lot of talking going on. And I didn't ask anybody to mute. I wanted them to feel like they could kind of communicate. And one of my students did say, "Mrs. Magnotta, do you want us all to go on mute so you can hear everybody?" And I said, "Well, what do you think?" And they're like, "Probably go on mute." I said, "Then everybody let's go on mute." And everyone went on mute, and then everyone put in the comments. That was so much better. So we sort of established those virtual classroom rules together. But when they came early, I didn't have to worry about, oh, is Johnny doing something that he shouldn't be doing? One, I could see him. He couldn't see me, but I could see him. And two, I knew that we had sort of already had this sense of trust established. Typically, if this were a live virtual meeting with you, I would have had music playing at the very beginning, just to kind of a different song every meeting, just to kind of get them engaged, to draw their attention to something other than sitting there staring at a blank screen. I would put up maybe a puzzle or a quote or something for them to think about before we get started, and then I would have music playing for sure. When you come into these meetings, you got to come in high energy. Like, this is the best thing you've done all day long, because you don't want them to feel like you're uncomfortable having a live meeting with them. You also don't want them to feel like you don't want to be there. So you got to make sure that you come in above and beyond even your normal energy you have in the classroom. I would double that for a virtual, because you want them to stay engaged. You want them to be excited. I know it's exhausting. I know it sort of feels like you're trying to entertain them, and to a certain degree, you are. Because remember, in your classroom, you have total control of the environment. When you're virtual, you are competing with their pet, with their little sibling, with their video game, with all the stuff that you ask them not to bring, but they're going to bring anyway, because maybe they only have one place in their house where everyone can work at the same time. So playing music, I usually start off with a game, especially on Fridays. We always start off with a game. I will show you 2 of the games that my students liked the most. The first one we did was Quick Draw. Again, this one's through Google. You click on Let's Draw, and now I have to draw a vase. So I would draw the vase. See if I can do it here for you.
I see red or streetlight. Oh, I know. It's vase.
It's a vase. So they kind of walk you through all of that. That's really nice. The other one, and so with that one, I have kiddos share their screen. Again, I taught them how to share their screen. Everything you do virtually is just like the first day of school. You have to teach them how to do everything. You have to teach them how to mute, teach them how to share their screen. We have to teach them what's appropriate to share on their screen. We have to teach them that they're not allowed to turn off their camera. We have to teach them that they're not allowed to leave their camera without permission. Like, everything has to be taught. Again, it's a little bit annoying, but it's 100% worth it, because when you're in these meetings and you're working with these kids, it just makes it so much easier if they are all on the same page. So I would have Johnny share his screen. Johnny would draw his pictures, and then he's done. He got 5 out of 6. I would have maybe Sammy goes. Sammy tries to do it. Sammy gets 4 out of 6. Someone's got to beat 5 out of 6. Maybe we go through 2 or 3 kids. Someone gets 6 out of 6. We're done playing. I would let 2 or 3 kids go at a time, and then I'd say, okay, next time we'll start with somebody else. The other one that we did, which my kids really seemed to enjoy, was the Jig Zone puzzles. Now, this one does not require them to share their screen. Again, they can if they want to. They do not have to. But this one, they just pick any puzzle. So maybe they pick We'll do the butterfly one. And then they have a 6-piece classic. So if you're primary, maybe you start off 6 or 20 pieces. If you are, I think we did 48 classic for my middle schoolers. And again, this was just sort of to wait for the stragglers to come in, or maybe we were trying to kind of just take a break or have some sort of fun. I gave out team points for this, so if they won, they got team points. And then they would go ahead and say, Mrs. Magnato, I'm done. And then I would time them. And again, I trust them on all of this stuff. I can tell if my time was 15 seconds and the fastest time was 3 seconds and they did it in 1 second, then they probably didn't do it. You can use judgment on that. But this one was blocked by our school, so make sure you talk to whoever your tech person is to see if you can allow some of that. From what I can tell, all of the puzzles on here are school appropriate. I haven't found one yet that's not school appropriate. So it's just something nice to kind of get them in, to kind of get them drawn in and hooked. So I would start off with that. Again, it's quick, it's simple, it takes at most 5 minutes, done. Then I would teach the lesson. Now this is where a couple of things come into play. One, I have my whiteboard, so I can use this. If you do not have that opportunity, at the bottom of your screen, and I'm going to actually stop sharing this for just a second here. Maybe not. At the bottom of your screen, there is a menu bar, I guess toolbar here, and you can see, and I'll actually show you where it is. Let me pull it up here for you. You are able to see this bar of options. If you have, my computer's HP, it's Microsoft based. I'm not sure what it looks like on the Apple computers. I don't know. But I'm going to stop sharing my presentation for just a minute here. And let me show you this. Okay, so this is the down here. I'll use a pen here. Down here at the bottom, I draw, there you go. The bottom, let me make it a little bit bigger so you can see that. There is a button, here we go, for your Windows Ink workspace. If you click on that, you have two options. You have a whiteboard option and you have a full screen snip option. So this is my full screen snip. This is what I was looking at while I was presenting my screen to you. So this is my full screen snip. From here, you can annotate and draw on whatever it is you need to annotate and draw on. So let me show you an example here of something that you could do if maybe you were teaching social studies. Again, my husband teaches social studies, or teaches 4th grade, so he helps kids with social studies a lot. Let me show you how this would work here. Maybe my screen to share again. Okay, so here I have this map of the United States, and maybe you want to talk about where you live, what region you live in. Again, I'm going to come down here to my Windows Ink workspace. I'm going to click on my full screen snip. It will take a full screen snip. Let me get rid of this one. It will take a full screen snip of whatever image, whatever's on your screen. And then from there, you are then able to talk about, okay, well, this is the Pacific Ocean. Over here is the Atlantic Ocean. We live in Pennsylvania, so we live right here. Maybe you were talking about the Pacific Northwest in class, and you can show them over here is the Pacific Northwest. So you can talk about the Pacific Northwest and the attributes that it has. You can talk about the similarities they have. You can talk about if you're traveling there, which direction do you have to go? And your kids can see all of this. If you ever mess this up or you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, if you just click the undo button up here in the top right left-hand corner, it will go ahead and remove all of that for you. So that is an option if you don't have a whiteboard. Now, your kids won't be able to draw on this. That you would need something, like I said earlier, like a Jamboard for them to be able to annotate that. But if you have a Jamboard, you can put this on there, share it with the kids, and they can all interact back and forth. This is just simply something for them to look at that you can kind of interact with. It's helpful. I like it. Another thing that you could use, they have again, underneath this Microsoft Workspace, they have a whiteboard option. So this would be just like your whiteboard that you would have in your classroom. Again, you could use a pen, a shape, a table. You could export it if you're done. You can invite somebody on here. The only thing that I would say is we don't have Microsoft accounts at our building. So for me to add my kids in here, I really wouldn't be able to do that. I would, again, use Jamboard for that. And lastly, I would recommend looking to see if you have a Promethean board or something along those lines, if the software that you use for that is accessible at home. Mine is. So that's what I used the entire time, and I can try and pull it up for you here. That's what I used the entire time we were in sort of the situation in this spring. I just used my Active Inspire. It gave me, let's see, cancel that. So it gave me a whiteboard that I could use, and it's the same one that my kids see in my classroom, so they were familiar with it when I would pull it up. And then I could also just send it up to the desktop, so I could then from here do all of the same things that I was able to do with, like, here's Pennsylvania, here's Pacific Northwest. I can do all of that on here. So again, I would look into seeing if you have that option. So when you are conversing with the students, and again, I'm recording this. I probably should have told you this again. I'm recording this through a Google Meet. This is exactly, you would be like one of my students, exactly what my students would see from my screen. They would see a little picture of me, and they would see whatever I'm presenting. In this case, it's the map of the United States and my whiteboard. Again, those are the things that I use to kind of get me through. If it was a quick question, I would just use the whiteboard behind me. If it was something that needed a little bit more finesse with it, then maybe I would go through and use my Active Inspire whiteboard. Maybe I'd pull up a Jamboard if I could. So those are just some things that I did during my lessons to help kind of create some normalcy within my lesson for my students. The last thing here, get back to my slides. The last thing here, or the last two things, the question, theme, discussion. So I think the important thing to realize with virtual learning and distance learning is, again, like I've said previously, the control that you have over your students is not as great as what it is when we're in a classroom. So what I can do usually in a 20-minute lesson, I might only be able to get through 10 minutes of, because I might be starting to lose kids quick. So I would really recommend cutting your lesson in half, and then stopping to do a question or a theme discussion. So your question could be favorite ice cream, have every kid answer. Or maybe it's what do you like to do for fun, have every kid answer. What is your favorite? Maybe do a would you rather. Endless opportunities with that. Maybe the questions you feel like the kids are not as involved as they used to be on them. Do a theme day. Bring your pet to class day. So maybe this is when, okay, boys and girls, we're going to take a quick break. I would like to meet all of your pets. So bring your pets with you to class. And then they go, they get all their pets, they bring back, we talk about them, we introduce them, they leave. Now, again, this might actually make your class longer, But the amount of time the kids are engaged is what you're focused on, not necessarily the length of your class. So my meetings, my usual class is 47 minutes. My meetings typically lasted an hour and 15 minutes. A lot of that time was just, we took 5-10 minutes to do the puzzle game at the very beginning. We took 20 minutes to talk about our pets because I have 20 kids in the class who were all there. Maybe I gave them 5 minutes at the beginning of class just to chit chat with their friends and check up on each other. So that adds up quickly. So for yourself, budget enough time that you can get through all of this stuff, but also know that sometimes, some days, your lesson, although you think it's super important, it might get trumped by a puppy. And that's the reality of it. So take the time, learn the dog's name, and then pick up with your lesson afterwards. Maybe you don't do a pet day. Maybe you have a door decorating contest and they have to decorate their bedroom door, decorate their front door if they don't have a bedroom door. Like, there are so many things you could do. You could do theme days. We did a bunch of theme days in the spring. So we did theme days. You could do that. And then lastly, once you finish your lesson, so go back in, say, okay, thank you for answering my questions, or thank you for all of your pets. Put everything away. We're going back to the lesson. Maybe we do some practice. Maybe you read a story, whatever is your lesson involved. The last thing that I would do is I would close with a challenge. And that's sort of what is up here. On the top of my presentation here, I have those emojis. Now, I had an emoji on every single slide. So this was the first one, second one, third one, the fourth one. On this one, I have them all together. So maybe this is the challenge. Again, if you have primary, you could make this as simple as, can you name the shapes that I had on my presentation? They could draw them. They could post them in a private message to you. Something to kind of keep them like eyes on the screen, because they're not going to want to miss a slide. So this one for me, the question is, when is my birthday? That's your challenge for next class. So that's what I leave them with. That's all I say. Maybe some of them know, most of them probably won't, but these little clues up here. So my birthday is in a winter month, it's cold. The month has fireworks, so it's probably not February. Maybe it's January, maybe it's December for Christmas, I don't know. And there's 6 tallies here. So my birthday is January 6th. So birthday, winter month. I'm going to say it's either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So December or January is on the 6th. The 6th is closer to New Year's Day, so maybe it's January 6th. Again, that's something quick and simple that you can do. Put a little picture on each slide. Have the kids try and figure it out. It keeps them engaged because they are now watching your screen and they don't want to miss a screen, so they don't want to miss a picture. Simple. Another challenge could be, maybe you just give them your task or your challenge, in addition to completing your assignment, is I want to see you do one thing around the house that is helpful or beneficial to somebody else that you live with. So I did that when I had a lot of kids show me pictures of them helping make dinner. Again, that required zero work on my end, but it gave them something to focus on. So when we met the next time, they had something to show, like, this is what I did while I was gone. I always close the challenge on the virtual stuff. I think it's way more exciting than homework. And again, I just think it makes it more engaging for them. So the more that you can do for them, you should do, in my opinion. I am very much pro letting kids get to know me. They can ask me just about any question. I will tell them any question. A lot of them know my family because they work in the district. So there's not a whole lot about me that my students don't know. However, I have learned that on this virtual situation, I felt like I was telling them more and more about myself than what I typically would. I don't think that's wrong. I think it's just the nature of what we were doing. I think they were telling me more about themselves than what they typically would, just because of what we're doing. And, oh, that's my little brother in the background. He was doing this because we had to do this. And then with that conversation, I'm like, oh, that girl's got a lot going on in her house. You just learn more. So I would say, yes, your lesson's important. Yes, educating them is important, but also give them the opportunities to talk about themselves and give them opportunities to learn about you. So that way they actually form a connection as much as they can without being with you person to person. So that's sort of my plan for when I have a virtual meeting, is how I'm going to approach it. Again, providing outside opportunities with rewards, always beneficial. I would meet with my kids 2 or 3 times a week, and then I created a video and posted to Google Classroom for just about every set of lessons that they had to do through the program that we use. Just because I know some kids would prefer to listen to me than they would the person on the computer. So they would watch the person on the computer, then they would come to mine for extra assistance, or maybe they would watch mine first so they kind of had an idea what the person was talking about whenever they started watching theirs. I also did rewards for my kids. So at the very end of our virtual learning experience, I did appreciation pizzas. So kids who were working super hard, they attended as much as they could, they asked good questions, they retook assignments. Kids just went above and beyond in the virtual setting. I personally delivered a $4 personal pizza to them that I got at our local pizza place. So that alone, like, parents appreciated it, the kids loved it. I loved being able to see them in person, mask on. I handed it to them and then washed my hands or hand sanitize right after. Like, we did everything we could safety wise, but that helped tremendously. So just keep in mind that, like, although we are virtual, if you live in your district that you teach or close to it, it doesn't have to be completely virtual. Like, you have the opportunity to sort of see them from a distance or take them things, or you can mail them things. I did a phone call. I called every single one of my students twice just to check in and say hi. I called, talked to the parent, asked, is there anything I can do to help? Do you need anything? Can I talk to your kid? Just to kind of help let them know that, like, you still care and you're still there. Because if they know that you still care, they will care enough to come to all of your classes, or as many of them as they can. And lastly, here before I go, just a reminder, be mindful of those home scenarios. What is reasonable to expect from students right now? Some students are in a situation where, like, things are not good at home. So do I get upset that they don't do any of their work? No, they're just trying to survive. Some parents are working, so that little kindergartner or first grader might not be able to get onto the meet because their parents are working. Maybe you need to do your meets in the evening. Yes, it's an inconvenience to us. I completely understand that. I have a family, like, I get it. But if I have to take an hour out of my week or out of my evening once a week so I can meet with my second graders, I probably would if that's something that I needed to do. And I think the fact that you're even here and that you were still listening says you probably would too. So just be mindful of that. Maybe it's not realistic to expect them to come every single day. Maybe it's not realistic for them to come and work hard every single day. Maybe them just being there is working hard enough and you don't push them beyond that. So some things to kind of consider. And lastly, if you have any questions for me, if you want a copy of this presentation, just ask me. I will send it to you. If you are within the Slippery Rock Area School District and you need your Act 48 credit hours, my code is SAM01. Again, it is right here, top right-hand corner, SAM01. So when you go to complete that Google form for your Act 48 submission, you're going to need that code, SAM01. This is digital learning. Best of luck to you with whatever your school chooses to do in the fall. Have a really good school year. I hope wherever, if it's virtual, if it's in the classroom, if it's a combination of both, this was helpful to you. Even just a little bit helpful would make this all worth it. And then lastly, just this one little quote here: be stubborn about your goals and flexible about your methods. So my goal for this upcoming school year is I want my kids to learn and enjoy what we're doing. So if we're learning and we are enjoying that learning process, I am happy. However I have to get there, I will figure it out. Some food for thought. Best of luck. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Again, that code, if you need it, is SAM01. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.